When I started the sport, it was a hobby. Then I got so enthusiastic about it, I was willing to give up everything else in order to pursue a racing career.
But one day I realized that that was me.
In the end, he finds his egotism is justified. He is one of the best.
A bygone era of Formula One competition is brought vividly back to life in this rarely seen documentary film from 1974. I'm David Hobbs, and I'd like to welcome you to Speed Channel's special presentation of Champions Forever, French filmmaker Claude Duboc's cinematic survey of the state of the racing art during a particularly dangerous and tragic period of its evolution. Photographed during the 1973 World Championship season and narrated by the American actor Stacy Keach, the film encompasses the entire spectrum of its era. In addition to some spectacular racing footage, the feature is grounded by insights and comments from legendary Scotsman Jackie Stewart, who takes us on a personal tour of the storied Nürburgring circuit, and the great English motorcyclist and Formula One driver Mike Hailwood, whose racing career took a sudden, violent turn for the worst at that very same track in 1974, and for whom yours truly filled in for a couple of events. Most poignant of all, though, is the appearance of two other late great names in the sport, Frenchman Francois Cevert and American Peter Revson, both of whom were to perish prior to the picture's premiere while pursuing their passion for racing. Professional automobile competition at its highest level has always been a dangerous game, but perhaps never more so than during the period depicted in this film, as indicated by its original American release title of The Quick and the Dead. This is a truth the filmmakers did not shy away from, and a point that bears mentioning before we begin the program. The motion picture you are about to see contains some very graphic footage of several devastating and ultimately deadly accidents, the first of which actually opens the film. Therefore, we recommend you exercise discretion in choosing to view this program dedicated to the memory of the great Formula One drivers, those who will remain champions forever.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
These cars, they are cars, may be the fastest road-going machines in the world. They'll never take anybody anywhere. They'll never go from one place to another. They'll just travel around in tight little circles. Racetracks in Europe, America, all over the world. There are maybe 50 men in the world, maybe not that many, who can drive cars like these as fast and as well as they can be driven. When these men get together to find out which of them is fastest, the event is called a Grand Prix race. Grand Prix, grand prize. An event in the World Championship for drivers. The race itself lasts, 2 hours. The event, though, covers 3 days. Now, the first day, the cars and the drivers arrive and begin to practice. The second day, practice becomes more intense. The third day, the race is held. Simple enough, 3 days, one by one. Except that on any one of these days, whenever a man gets into one of these machines, something can go wrong. Even the best driver's concentration can slip just for a second. Or, what's more likely, any one of 100 parts on this machine can break or foul. So these 3 days go by like the best circus or the loudest spectacle ever. And then, suddenly, in a moment no one could foretell, but everyone knew was possible, a car gets into trouble, and a man is cracked like a nut or burned to death in seconds. After this happens, the drivers go on practicing or racing until the contest is over and there's a winner. And then they go on to another race. But during those 3 days, the human capacity for excellence, for ingenuity, for callousness, for vulgarity, for sheer noise, for waste, for daring, for beauty. Those capacities are stretched about as far as they can go outside of war.
Come on, 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 come on. Keep coming, keep coming. Oh, that's splendid.
Nice job, nice job.
Yeah, looking good.
Making it clear that cable? Yeah, you're right. Touch your left. Left hand down a bit. Let it eat. Right. Okay. Slowly. Okay. There you go. Okay, put it underneath.
I think if you put the
Ingenuity. It's not just that a Grand Prix car is fast, though it is, very fast. It's that it's quick, responsive, agile, able to dart and dodge like a fish in water. The driver throws the gear lever an inch or so, and the gear assembly instantly reins in the engine. A touch on the accelerator commands carburetors, valves, pistons, sparks. Fuel and air mix violently under high compression, and the power moves through transmission, the limited spin differential, the suspension, and down to the wheels. Suspension geometries, force vectors, aerodynamics, it's all metal. Bits and pieces of metal and fiberglass. But the temptation is to think it's not metal at all, but some thoroughbred animal with a soul of its own, brought to life at the track by a team of sorcerers' apprentices called mechanics.
Which is like in women. Well, I don't know about now, but I don't know.
Lars-Ove Berglund och Erling Johansson till informationen. Lars-Ove Berglund.
Already, morning day one, before the cars are even ready for practice, the advertising circus is in full swing. Outside his car, a Grand Prix driver is the hub of a business, which is like no business but show business. He's in the central ring of a three-ring circus, and the people who call out to him and gather around him know that he's the star, even if half of them aren't sure what his name is. It's silly to say that drivers should be above all the publicity hoopla. Racing is incredibly expensive, and nobody could compete without a sponsorship. Cosmetics, cigarettes, Argentine meat, or Brazilian coffee, it doesn't matter. As long as the corporate barons get a driver into a competitive car and let him do his job, which is to race, he'll gladly wear their colors on his shield like a medieval knight and go forth to do battle for them.
Okay, bye-bye.
on every track, there's a line, a way in and a way out that's the fastest for you and your car. Finding it takes time, hard work, a special kind of sensitivity, which is why there are a lot of brave boys around who can go fast, but who'll never compete in Grand Prix.
Tell me about your education as a driver.
Well, I think it's very simple. Jackie did all my education, Jackie Stewart. When I arrived in the team, in the Tyrrell team, I had just done 2 years of Formula 3, which is nothing for education, as far as education is concerned. And a year of Formula 2, and then I get into Formula 1. So in fact, I was what you could call a mad driver. I was driving like hell. I was not thinking enough to what I was doing. And Jackie stopped all that and teach me how you must analyze a car, how you must think when you are driving, what kind of vision you must have. He did all my education.
At the beginning of 1968, Honda, the people I was riding for, they said that they were packing up racing. And at the time they told me this, there was nowhere else to go. All the other factories had signed up their riders. And so, really, I thought it was a sort of opportune time to quit and try something else of a similar nature. And so I started car racing, and also I was fed up with bike racing. You know, I've been doing it for 12, 13 years, and I think that's quite long enough to have been doing anything. I've done everything that I could possibly do. I've won the World Championship and all the races that I could possibly have won. And I've made really enough money to retire.
And when I started the sport, it was a hobby. I was doing amateur racing while holding down a job, and then I got so enthusiastic about it, I was willing to give up everything else in order to pursue a racing career, just to see how far I could go and how good I could become. And you might say I created a monster, because now it's my whole life. It takes so much of my time that I really don't have that much time for anything else. I mean, for the balance that I could foresee then, being a professional race driver, I don't have. I'm a professional race driver all the time, it seems.
Jackie is still the maestro for me, because he's the only man, maybe in the world, to be able to do a whole Grand Prix of 90 laps, 2 hours racing, without making one mistake.
But then you say...
But I think I am on one lap, I am now as fast as Jackie.
What does that mean? What do you have to do to beat him?
Not to make any mistakes.
How does that come?
Experience, concentration, and also being able to set your car so well that it will be the easiest car to drive in the race. And Jackie is so good in analyzing the car. He's reading the car so well that when the flag drops, he has always a very easy car to drive. He doesn't have to fight with his car because the car is not going around the corner very well, so he has to fight. Never. Jackie always managed to fix his car such a way that it would be very easy to drive.
The Nürburgring's a very special place. You know, in the Nürburgring you've got problems that never do exist in any other racetrack in the world. First of all, it's 14.7 miles round. It used to have 187 corners per lap. See those left-handers, right-handers, you're going uphill, you're going down-dale. It's really a compromise, the whole thing, as far as the car is concerned, and to some extent also the driver. Because every lap I do at the Nürburgring, I make a mistake. I never go through the Nürburgring feeling that I've achieved something in the way of the perfect lap. Half the places around the Nürburgring, I think if I were to walk around them, I would be horrified. I would never drive around the place again. So the faster you drive around the ring, the less you know. And maybe that's the best thing to do. At the Nürburgring, rain is a problem because the racetrack is 14.5 miles long, as I said. You're coming round lovely dry weather conditions. The track is dry, the conditions are good. Suddenly, you enter an area that's had a shower of rain, or it's in a wood, and the track has never dried out properly. Now, this is a hazard at the Nürburgring. It's a hazard in any long circuit. But the Nürburgring is made up with a conglomerate of different road surfaces. They're not all the same. Some hold the water, and some, of course, dry out very easily. So the driver has to be more aware of what's coming ahead of him than perhaps in any other racetrack in the world. Here you have an easy situation. Suddenly we've come into wet roads again out of what was very dry. Now you've got to do this one right because it's followed immediately by another left-hand bend, and if you don't get the car in the right place on the road, this is where you can easily make a mistake. There's a lot of cars have gone off. Now a car's gone off on the inside here. He looks more like he's had a mechanical failure than a crash. I think you'll find, maybe he's had a bump too. He's had, I think, a mechanical failure, probably an engine problem. Now here we're through this left and right section here, and we go into a very late braking condition at the bottom of this hill. You come over here and you sort of see this corner. This is why you've got to have an excellent memory for the Nürburgring to recognize exactly where you are. Because not only have you to know the geography of the racetrack, but you've got to remember the road surface. And here is a place that holds water. So you come down here, accelerate out, try not to go in the dirt because you can pick up a puncture. There's a little river runs across the road there as well, so you've got to remember that. You're approaching the famous carousel, and if you look forward, you see the high fir tree. Now, we aim the car at that high fir tree, and if I put this car on the line for the fir tree, I go exactly into the bowl of the carousel. And there you are, into this bowl. It's a second gear corner. You're accelerating round this corner, not too fast, but still accelerating round, and out you come. The car lifts itself out the bowl, and if you do it properly, it's clean, it's fine, and you haven't got a problem. If you come out too early, the car will just fly straight over to the barrier. What is a very fast part of the circuit. We've got this situation coming out here in third gear, accelerating hard, going into fourth gear. And now we approach a thing called the Flugplaza. And this Flugplaza is where the first jump of the Nürburgring comes in. Now the car gets light over this little bump, you put it into fifth gear, top gear, mark you, going round here. You're accelerating hard. And this is a gamble, whether you change into fourth gear just before here or keep it in fifth, because just here the car takes off and you fly over this. You arrive on the ground again with not much room to start getting the car nicely balanced and sorted out for the start of a very fast section. Fastest part of the circuit with the main straight. You're going through here in fourth or fifth gear. You're climbing. It's quite a climb, so the car's really working hard. You're getting to the top of this rise here. Now, of course, there have been many accidents up here. There was a driver killed here a couple of years ago because you're going down this next section around 175 miles an hour. Doesn't look like it. When you see this here, you think it's a very short straight. This section here is taken at 175 miles an hour. You're in top gear, of course. And you go over this rise. Again, the car gets light as you go over the rise. It's up in the air. You've got to settle the car down again because the Nürburgring is never level. And you go into this left-hander. Now, I take this in top gear. I keep it in top gear, which is fifth gear. Now, look at this, a Nürburgring classic. You come out of a semi-dry road condition, straight into a change of surface, and now this surface holds rain. Terribly slippy. And here you've got a hard braking corner. You're in third gear. It's faster than you think, in fact. You go through here into what they call the foxhole. The foxhole used to be one of the most dangerous parts of the circuit, and they certainly have cleared it up a lot by putting barrier most of the way down. But again, you achieve your maximum speed on this whole circuit again down this section. And this also is hard to believe. Here you see yourself going through what is really a cutting in a heavily valleyed area with trees. Now, can you think of going down here at 175, where the car bottoms out in the bottom, it graunches the suspension, the chassis really gets gouged, and you start going up this other end here. Now, when you go up this hill, at the bottom here, if you look up the hill here, you're going up here with so much G-forces on that you can't take your foot really properly off the throttle and get it onto the brake. Just as you hit this corner, I stick it into fourth gear.
Racing is a matter of rhythms. And sometimes the rhythms are wrong, and you're fighting the car, you're fighting the track, fighting yourself.
Yeah. Can you see it sometimes going past here? It gets in a terrible pitching, but which is doing it around all the corners, you know. Yeah, I think that's quite advantage. Yeah. But it goes, you know, it's back to the old trouble where it goes oversteer and understeer. And as soon as you take your foot off the throttle, back in again, and then it oversteers, and you put your foot on the throttle and it... I seem to be quiet down on brakes again. The brakes have gone for a bloody burst. With Mike White still pushing his mind? Yeah. Okay, let's get it back. So drive it back.
Well, does it drive?
Yeah, it drives. Okay, what do you want to change? Pedal and it stops, is that right?
There are other times, though, when the rhythms are right, and it's just you and the car, the track and the conditions, and a complex harmony of rhythm and response. And you're driving at your far limit, yet completely in control.
As one can readily see, Formula One racing in the early 1970s was paradoxically both remarkably similar to and yet entirely different from what it is today. Certainly the glamorous circus-type atmosphere that surrounds the globe-trotting spectacle continues to attract the best and the beautiful worldwide. Corporate sponsorship is of course endemic to the sport today and a much greater component than it was during the early 1970s. And while the World Championship competition remains at the pinnacle of professional motorsport, the tools currently available to the best financed teams were virtually unthinkable at the time. i.e. Michael Schumacher's $30 million a year salary would have kept about 4 of those teams going for a couple of years in those days. Practically every car in that race in 1973, other than Ferrari, had the Cosworth DFV engine, weighed just under 400 pounds, developed about 490 horsepower, and revved to about 10,000 RPM. Today, the engines weigh under 300 pounds. They develop 900 horsepower close to, and rev at 18,500 RPM. And this is after the FIA keep on putting caps on development about every 5 years. And yet, despite these many differences, the very core of racing remains unchanged. To be the best and the fastest, to become world champion. And if you're good enough, to enter that vaunted pantheon of the great Formula One drivers, those destined to become champions forever.
But one day I realized that it could happen to me. In Monza, in 1970, the Italian Grand Prix. On the Friday, in the practice, I spin the car at 200 miles an hour. I spin the car and spin and spin and spin. Finally, I stopped. I did not hit anything. I drove back to the pits with all square tires, you see, because the rubber has been taken off. And I laugh about it. I tell all my friends, oh, Christ, I spun the car 200 miles an hour, fantastic, very funny and so on. And next day, the Saturday, official practice, I was still driving, trying to get a good qualifying time. And 200 yards ahead of me, Jochen Rindt get killed at 80 miles an hour in Courbe Ascari, very fast corner. Hit the guardrail. Guardrail was badly fixed, and he get killed. And I couldn't sleep the night before the race. I realized that the previous day I should have been killed.
You want to know about the accident, I suppose?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we were into the third lap and I was following Charlton and Reutemann. Charlton lost it on the first corner and I hit him and consequently spun and stalled in the middle of the track. Regazzoni came round, hit my car, and the whole lot burst into flames and we disappeared off to the edge of the track, all in flames. And I pressed my fire extinguisher, put my fire out, got out of my car and looked across, and Rega was unconscious in the car. So I went over and undid his seatbelts and tried to pull him out.
You went through the fire to pull him out?
Yeah, I was sitting in the fire.
Was it a big fire?
Yeah, fairly big. And I couldn't get him out because his legs were trapped by the car, which was squashed up. And then my clothing caught fire because the petrol was leaking out of his tank. And I went away. And then they got the fire out. And he was still sitting in there, unconscious. And then the fire went off again. So I went back in again and helped pull him out with the help of a marshal. It scared me that that sort of thing could happen, you know.
Yeah, we talk about our experiences on the racetrack and what a car does at 180 miles an hour. The only way you can talk about this is with another race driver, you know, intelligently, as far as we're concerned. I mean,
Well, for example,
hopefully, we want to get a little feedback. We want to compare notes. So, in order to do this, we make superficial friendships. But I would say away from the racetrack, there are very few of us that are close to one another.
Why is that?
Because we're all rivals. We're all out to beat each other. This is the contradiction.
Do you think that happens socially? I mean, in a party, do you find yourself competing?
Well, I don't know. But I think there's a certain tenseness. And I think, like I say, at parties, we're all good acquaintances. We all know each other to a certain extent, and we're able to get along with each other at a party. But I'm saying away from the racetrack, away from on a social event that is connected with a race event, I don't think you'd see too many of us together. Racing you can only do once a week. There's ways you can compete financially where you can get at it every day.
But the whole lifestyle of being a racing driver, the travel, the independence, don't you simply get very lonely sometimes?
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
I mean, isn't this one of the occupational diseases, in effect?
Right.
What do you do
Particularly
with
with me, because going back and forth all the time, it is. It can be a very lonely life. And that's one of the sacrifices, which is an emotional sacrifice.
Fine. If you're making an emotional sacrifice here, what is the emotional gain there?
Well, it's attaining one's goal, satisfaction, gratification. The financial reward.
Because, I've got nothing in common at all with the other drivers. Even if they were staying in the same hotel, they'd sit at separate tables. And B, the guys that I have got something in common with, like the mechanics, you know, who are really great bunch of guys, and I'm more in sort of touch with them than anybody else. They're always working. But even when they're not working, you know, they think that I think I'm a bit of a snob, and they can't really let themselves go, nor can I. So, you know, like you say, it's pretty generally a pretty lonely sort of deal.
They travel all night to camp out in the pine woods, just beneath the ancient castle at Nuremberg. They fill up tattered old Montjuic Park in Barcelona, and the brand new grandstands at Anderstorp in Sweden, and Paul Ricard in France. They broil in the sun in Sao Paulo and Kyalami, shiver in the rain in Zandvoort and Silverstone, go mad at Monza and Watkins Glen. At 15 races in 15 countries, some 2 million people come to watch the championship decided. 350,000 people clog the Autobahn to get to the Nürburgring for the running of the Grosser Preis von Deutschland, or at least be nearby. Most of them can only glimpse the cars as they roar by every 8 minutes, but they're there anyway, within sound of the engines. And that seems to be enough. In the old city of Monte Carlo, the Grand Prix de Monaco unwinds through the twisting streets of the city itself. The balconies of the grand hotels and the windows of the houses and pensions along the way become grandstands. It's the season's premier social event, sanctioned by royalty. Press on race morning is a sort of race in itself. There are no rules. Any means goes. You could call it the Grand Prix of getting there. Grand Prix, the sport of aristocrats. Well, that depends on where you stand and which way you look. Europeans have always been crazy about motor racing. The South Americans are even crazier about it. The Americans are just crazy.
What's the idea with the flower and the cannon? Cops give me too much hassle, being pointed at the traffic. You know this race was sponsored by the Navy? No idea. I hope the shadow wins. Hey! You work for Bud? No, I'm just another nut up at the Glen, and I love it. I love it. Hey! Are you a racing fan? Oh, I'm a racing fan. This is my 6th year in a row for the Grand Prix. That jumbo thing sitting out there. See that trophy? Yeah, I got a fart in my cake on lost to win it. I want to tell you that. I caught pneumonia like Go ahead, get under there. Angelo!
as you can see, Watkins Glen in the early 1970s was, shall we say, unique. Now, we saw those people in the bog rolling around in the mud, being sprayed down by the fire hoses. That was a part of the crowd, but the vast majority of the crowd came to see the cars and the stars. They loved to have all those European drivers come over and take part in the US Grand Prix. The drivers liked to come too, as did the teams, because I think the first prize was $50,000. It was by far the highest dollar amount to win a Grand Prix in the World Championship of those days. And the drivers loved the track. I drove there many times. It really was a terrific track to drive on. Lots of elevation change, a very good variety of corners, some great overtaking spots, nice fast straights, slow corners, fast corners. It really was good fun and very, very challenging. It must be said too that Watkins Glen played host to one of Formula One's darkest days when Francois Sever was killed there in a horrendous accident during practice for the US Grand Prix on October the 7th, 1973. For Sever's teammate, the great Jackie Stewart, it was to have been his valedictory event prior to retirement from the sport. Instead, he and fellow Tyrrell driver Chris Amon forfeited the race in tribute to their fallen comrade. I don't believe Jackie ever fully recovered from the tragic events of that fall afternoon in upstate New York. He went on to become an outspoken proponent of change in racing, emerging as its preeminent advocate for safety. In fact, he already was an advocate for safety. I remember a couple of years before that, we'd all gone off to Mid-Ohio for a Can-Am race. And when Jackie got there, to his horror, he saw these trees right close to the edge of the track. Now, we'd all raced with those trees there for years, but he saw those trees and said, I'm not having those trees there, you know, they've got to come down. Well, the circuit owner looked like him and he'd come from Mars. He said, I'm not going to cut those trees down for some little pipsqueak like you. Well, we went back the next morning and there were the trucks dragging the trees out. They'd all been cut down and some more as well. And this is the sort of thing that Jackie could do because he had clout. He was a world champion. He was a great champion. And, of course, he really had the guts to hang in there and say, well, if they don't go, I'm going to go. And were it not for Jackie Stewart, the vastly improved safety mechanisms installed in today's cars and on today's circuits might never have become possible.
Very big physical effort than to drive Formula One for many reasons, because steering is hard, the brake pedal is hard, the clutch pedal is very hard, and your muscle have to work a lot to be able to move all those things, and the gear lever also is hard. But the biggest effort you have to do is to fight against the G-force, and that is just amazing. People do not realize that in a Formula One today, you get 2 Gs for a whole Grand Prix. Longitudinal Gs when you accelerate or when you brake, and lateral Gs when you go through corners. Just to fight against that, just think that your head is the heaviest part of your body. You have a helmet on it, which is heavy, and then you have to keep your head at its normal place. You have to fight for that for 2 hours. Same for your legs, same for your whole body. You know the amount of weight you lose in a Grand Prix? In just one Grand Prix, average? You know, I'm thin, I have no fat to lose. I lose 3 kilos in a Grand Prix, only of water.
Somebody asked Francois Sever what he thinks about when he can't sleep. He said, I always fall asleep immediately. Somebody else tried hard to pry into his deepest feelings about danger, himself, his craft. Why do you ask me these things, he said. I'm an athlete. I don't think about those things. On race morning, Sever puts on double layers of fireproof Nomex underwear, a driving suit that can withstand a minute or so of burning gasoline, thin-soled driving shoes. He is an athlete, not a philosopher, or a challenger of human limits, or symbol of triumph over fear and danger, but simply a man in the uniform of a trade, a man more in touch with his body and his senses than most. But to the thousands who line the edges of the world's Grand Prix tracks, they are more. Something between movie stars and knights in armor.
Elles sont bons, hein. C'est un message d'une belle Suédoise. Ah, Vera Mulchung, numéro de téléphone et tout. Tout le monde, tous les
At last, they shut out the crowd with earplugs, cover their faces with fireproof masks, draw on the thick gloves, close themselves up within high-impact padded helmets, and lower their visors. Alone, deeply anonymous. Some process of centering must go on within them now, by which they make themselves, as far as possible, machines, as quick, as precise, as invulnerable.
It's a challenge, precision and skill. I hope you make it, 'cause I'm sure you will. Change gears, accelerate. Come on, just bring the pain. You and your both mate. I hope you make it, hope you ain't never late. Amen. What's your game? Aretha Meadow and the chain. Hey, why? You do what you do. Or maybe there's a challenge in stopping you. Hey, man. What's your game? Aretha Meadow and the chain.
motor ha realizado para todos ustedes el programa oficial.
Let's return now to our special presentation of Champions Forever, the Quick and the Dead.
Now, watch it again.
Je sais pas, il s'est accroché en tête et puis...
Is Geordie Scheckter's car. Geordie Scheckter, the young boy who we fortunately saw leaping out of the car. But look, every wheel is off, the front wheel is integrated, the engine we can't see because bodywork, and there's still the place saying for.
There's no more likely time for crashes to happen than on the first lap. Everybody's bunched up, trying to get an advantage. A young driver in the third row, desperate to take on the leaders, sees a chance. He throws himself into the turn, gets wide, wider, loses control, with everybody screaming down right behind him. He said later, I made a mistake. Chassis each, $25,000. Engines each, $18,000, plus about the same amount in modifications. 2 days practice at, say, $1,000 a day per car. One team, 3 cars, completely lost. Another 4 or 5 have to be thrown away as well. Not counting transportation or rebuilding, figure $500,000 lost in just about the time it takes to sail. But the amazing thing is that in all that ear-splitting, out-of-control melee, one driver suffered a broken ankle, and that's all. The money? Well, there's lots more where that came from. And as for the race, well, you just line everybody up who's left and start again. something goes wrong with the car and you're forced to go into the pits, the mechanics can't perform miracles. They can change a tire in about 30 seconds, replace a foul plug in 35. But it doesn't matter. You pull into the pits in the first place, and half a minute later you drive out far behind. Then the miracles are all up to you.
We continue now with more of Champions Forever, the quick and the dead.
Because I prefer a thrilling life. I enjoy. You know the fantastic thing, I think every man in the world is looking for that, is to make from his passion his business. That's what I have done. I had passion for motor racing and it's my business. Cannot be more happy. Everything I do about motor racing, I enjoy it. Anything, because it is my passion.
After that happened, they went on racing until there was a winner. And then they went on to another race.
The death of Roger Williamson at Zandvoort on July the 29th, 1973 provides another indelible image of the danger inherent in professional racing during that period. Yet, remarkably, I can tell you from my own first-hand experience that for those of us actually driving these machines, the impact was surprisingly minimal. I mean, you saw the totally inadequate response from any sort of safety or rescue squads there, nothing at all. The only person involved at all was David Purley, another driver. The cars themselves, of course, when you look at them now at vintage races, you just can't believe that you ever used to get in there. I mean, I was always a bit tall for a driver. I've got pictures of me, my head sticking up that far over the rollover bar. The gas tanks were just fabricated out of aluminum, welded together. And in my case, I used to have to take the seat out so I'd fit in the car. So there I am sitting in the middle of the gas tank. And for long races, we used to strap another tank on top of the bulkhead with bungee cords, and a little pipe would just go down by my leg to the tank. I mean, can you imagine even driving down the highway now with about a 3 or 4 gallon gas tank velcroed to the dashboard? I mean, you just wouldn't do it, there's no doubt about it. Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, those who race either continue to do so or they quit the game. There is no other alternative. The universal truth is that motor racing is and always has been inherently dangerous, and while amazing strides forward in preventing loss of life and limb have taken place in intervening years since 1973, the fact remains that racing is and always will be a dangerous occupation. The faint of heart need not apply.
It starts maybe when a man learns he's one of the few people whose reflexes actually get quicker under pressure. He learns that going 175 miles an hour doesn't seem all that fast, not uncontrollable. He learns he can live with the boredom, the isolation, the rootlessness, in exchange for a few moments of sheer joy. In the end, he finds his egotism is justified. He is one of the best.
Transport? Okay, so you know it is a big problem.
Von Deutschland fürs Metternich hat nun den Sieger Podium geleitet. François Leer, sein Teamgefährte, etwas größer gewachsen, waren mit dem Luftrennen, das nur kleinere Und jetzt kommt Jacquier dazu, Jacquier in den blauen Overall, besonders gut, scheinwertig und laut unser Bundesverkehrsminister. Auch die Heckfahrten und Freundskapitäne in der blauen Jacke, Jacquier in der Mitte, Jacquier für And the third point of the point for the platform of the short circuit runs around the north curve. Jackie
Originally released in the US by Columbia Pictures in 1974, the documentary feature we have just seen has been known variously as The Quick and the Dead, One by One, and by the current moniker, Champions Forever. Seen today in hindsight of the terrible toll of talented lives lost, the picture seems somehow weightier, more historically significant. And while some of the filmmaking is hopelessly dated, even at times grating, it is at the same time compelling for its value as time capsule material. By virtue of its very existence, great drivers of the time like Sever, Hailwood and Revson live on, telling us in their own words what it was like to be them, to live the life, to race the circuits, to become champions forever. I'm David Hobbs. I hope you've enjoyed this Speed Channel special presentation. Please join me along with Rick DeBrule and Steve Matchett for all the latest Formula One action all season long right here on Speed Channel. So long for now.